Is the chief, we're waiting for, yeah.
Making sure to shut my phones off, that's always important.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Beth Golden with the Pinal County Attorney's Office. The County Attorney has called this press conference today to provide an update on a charging decision in the case involving the killing of Apache Junction Police Officer Gabriel Facio. Chief Pooley with the Apache Junction Police Department will be making a statement after County Attorney Miller today. We ask that you hold all questions until after the prepared remarks. Please also note that due to the ongoing nature of the case, there may be questions we are unable to answer at this time. With that, I will turn it over to Pinal County Attorney Miller.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. My name is Brad Miller, Pinal County Attorney. Attacks on law enforcement officers are on the rise. All of us here with the law enforcement with Pinal County are working hard every day to try to protect our community. Before I get into my prepared remarks, I would like to send a couple of thank yous to our law enforcement partners and introduce the very folks that are behind me here today. Today we have Apache Junction Police Chief Pooley, we have Sheriff Ross Teeple, we have Chief Benalis from the Eloy Police Department, we have Chief Bryce from Queen Creek Police Department. We also have Hank Mueller, who is my chief investigator, and my chief deputy, Gina Godby, here. As I stated before, attacks on law enforcement are increasing all across the nation, and we're starting to see it here in Pinal County also. Because of this rise, people need to take a stand against what is happening with police. People don't respect police officers anymore. And unfortunately, this type of disrespect is leading to assaults, casualties, and murder. This past year alone, there were over 85,000 assaults on police officers and 150 killed on duty. And somebody has to stand with our law enforcement partners to back the blue. Somebody has to hold these people accountable. And that's why I'm here today to announce that under my authority as a Pinal County Attorney, that we have filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty against Roger Nunez. I have spoken with the family. Chief Pooley has spoken with the family, and they are in full support of the decision coming out of my office. With that, I want to not focus on the suspect. I really want to talk about Officer Gabriel Facio here today. Gabriel Facio was the epitome of the American dream. He came to this country from Mexico and legally immigrated with the dream to become a police officer. It took him a number of years and various odd jobs, and he worked and worked and worked, and finally fulfilled that dream to become a police officer. And about 4 years ago, he found himself in Apache Junction and applied to be a police officer with Apache Junction. There he became one of the favorites, a jokester, somebody who everybody wanted to be around, somebody who encouraged others to fulfill their duties. And he truly loved being a police officer. And that was exuded in all of his actions and that everything that he had done for the police department. People wanted to work with him. They loved being around him. And that's why this particular case is so tragic. Now, when I look to evaluate a case on why we decided to seek the death penalty in this particular matter, we take multiple factors into account. Not only the facts of the particular case, the views of the next of kin, but also the circumstances, and of course, Arizona law. One of the factors we look at when examining whether we should seek the death penalty are what we call aggravating factors. And one of those aggravating factors are the death of a police officer while on duty. We want to let the community know that we take this issue seriously. And this decision today should show the community that we in fact do take this seriously. Now, before I take any questions, I would like to invite Chief Pooley to make a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for this opportunity. Our county attorney and I have spoken many times about this case, and it always goes back to Officer Facio and the type of man he was and the type of police officer he was and who his family is. This past weekend, I was in Mexico, and I was at the wedding of his daughter, his 22-year-old daughter who was married, and I'll share some pictures with you later. But I spent the weekend with the family, and this is a very humble family that is grateful for everything, beyond words of what they can express as how grateful they are to the community, to the law enforcement, to our county attorney, Brad Miller, and for the decisions that have been made. For us, we are continuing to heal. We're continuing to move forward. And just like any other tragedy, we have to move forward. Seeing the wedding of his daughter and being in the line with the wedding party was an honor to be with her, to see her taking that next step in her life without her father. And it was heartbreaking. There were a lot of tears shed, and there were a lot of smiles made, and a lot of good memories shared, past memories and new memories that were created. But it was all done without Officer Facio. And I know he would have loved to have been there. And we felt his presence, but he physically wasn't there. But on behalf of the men and women of the Apache Junction Police Department, we are in support of the decision made by our county attorney, Brad Miller. Law enforcement is a job that has changed over the years, and the attacks that we have seen on law enforcement, on the men and women in uniform, whether it's here in Apache Junction or across the country, they have continued to rise. And for me, I'm proud that we are making a stance and we're sharing a message and we're sending a message to those that are trying to do something that will get them in trouble and to try to attack an officer. It cannot happen. It's an attack on our country. It's an attack on our society and our communities. So thank you very much, and I appreciate you being here.
All right, are there any questions? Yes.
Mr. County Attorney Lauren Clark here with Fox 10. Thanks for having us all here today. As the county attorney, the buck stops with you with this decision. We're talking about an individual who took the life of a police officer, but this is still a grave decision to make. Explain the emotions that you had to go through and process in order to make this final decision.
I think one of the things you look at is service. You know, police officers go to work every single day not knowing whether they're going to come home. And unfortunately, sometimes they've been painted as these amorphous things, not realizing that they have families, spouses, children. They want to go to soccer practice and take their spouses out for a date night every once in a while too. These are human beings and they deserve that type of respect. And I truly thank God when every single night I hear that all of our law enforcement partners from every one of these agencies and the agencies in the rest of Pinal County come home. Unfortunately, sometimes they don't. And so we have to weigh these factors. And one of the main factors, as I stated, that we have to look at is what does Arizona law say? Because this is an objective, difficult decision that has to be made. But Arizona law looks at factors of whether and how a county attorney should decide whether to seek the death penalty. And one of those factors are whether a police officer was serving and killed in the line of duty. And it met that factor. And so that weighed heavily. Another huge factor that weighs heavily on my mind is what are the views of the next of kin, the true victims in this case? How do they weigh this? And also the police officers who were involved in this particular matter, because many of them are victims. And so you take all of that together, and yes, it was a difficult decision, but at the same time, it's the right decision, because people who attack a single law enforcement officer attack every law enforcement officer, and that's something that we need to take seriously.
County Attorney Miller, when you talk about the support the community has shown Officer Facio's family through
Yes.
the response at the funeral, the barbecue you all held, could you give us a little bit of insight into that conversation you had with the family members on what they told you they wanted in this decision?
Yeah, I'm not going to go into our private conversations because those are private conversations between myself and the family. But I will say this, is that the family 100% supports us. They feel the love and care. They're happy that we reached out. But it's not just me. Remember, this is an entire team. That's why we have all of our law enforcement officers standing behind us, because we truly are a team. And so it was the Apache Junction Police Department. It was our victim advocates who worked on this particular case. It was members from my office. And so they took all of that into account, and they look at us, and because we also showed up to the hospital to show them support, they trust that we're making the right decision, and they support that decision. And so that was one of the main, kind of the gist of what we actually discussed. Any other questions?
When you look procedurally
Sure.
at how this is going to play out, for people at home that have no idea what sequence of events happens when it comes to putting someone to death,
Yep.
could you explain how that works procedurally?
Yeah, so procedurally, it's going to proceed as if it's like a first-degree murder case, but obviously it's very much extended. So when you're seeking the death of a particular individual because they've committed such a heinous, grave act like was committed in this particular case, there's a huge part of what's called mitigation, where the defense counsel will have an opportunity to look at all of the things that the defendant did well in their life, have an extended investigation. They'll have mitigation experts and certain investigators hired so that they can look into all of those issues, much like we have. We've already sent investigators out, and we've been gathering information from the first day that we heard about this. And we have a lot of other information that the rest of you will be hearing about here in the coming future, and especially if this case, and when this case eventually does proceed to trial. And so, yes, it's an extended time frame, but it will proceed much like a first-degree murder case. But the biggest difference is this. In a lot of cases, and almost all of our cases in Arizona, the judge issues a sentence. Here in this particular case, when we're seeking the death penalty, it'll be the jury, the people from this particular community in Pinal County that will be making that decision. And that's the decision that I made, is that we need to bring it to the community, to let the community decide whether the murder of a police officer is worth seeking the death penalty. We believe it is, and we believe the jury will find that way too.
We also know with these death penalty cases, this is a long road ahead.
Yes.
Aaron Gunches, who was just put to death right here in Florence earlier this year, that was 23 years in the making. Knowing how long this takes, did that weigh in your decision? And are you on this for the long term?
Absolutely. That's absolutely one of the things that we discuss. So it's not a mystery on how we decide these particular cases. What my process was in deciding this particular matter was to bring all of our bureau chiefs, my top attorneys, into a particular room. We also had the investigators who investigated the shooting, and we also had members of the Apache Junction Police Department all come into a room, talk about it, brief the case, walk over the videos, the interviews, the investigation that my office has started to conduct. And then, of course, we sit privately with my top attorneys and look at all of the factors, including the costs, the time frame, and we discuss all of those things. And then I spoke personally. I actually called them, and I called them again yesterday just to confirm that they were still on board, knowing these time frames, and we discussed these time frames with them. And again, they still agreed that this was the right thing.
When you weigh punishment of life in prison versus being put to death, how do you weigh those as a measure of justice?
Justice, now we're getting very philosophical, and so I think it's an appropriate question. Philosophically, I think justice looks at multiple different things, including equal punishment. So that's one of the factors that we weigh. But we really go back to Arizona law. What does Arizona law objectively, reasonably say about what we should do in this particular case? And Arizona law under 13751 looks at certain aggravating factors. How should a county attorney weigh whether to seek death penalty or not? And we look at those factors. Does this case meet those factors? And in that case, this case does meet the factors. The next of kin and the victims in this case also believe that. And of course, we also have to show solidarity with law enforcement. And I do take it seriously that attack on one is an attack on all. It attacks the fabric of society, because these men and women standing behind me are the ones out there protecting our communities from crime. Unfortunately, crime is up and skyrocketing all across the nation here in Arizona. And these folks work diligently and dangerously every single night to protect us from that crime and to keep crime at bay. So we have to show solidarity with them. We have to show that we will also hold criminals accountable. And that certainly is going to happen here in Pinal County.
We know about the first-degree murder. I believe there's also aggravated assault and disorderly conduct.
Correct.
Charges as well. Can you speak to those at this time?
Yeah, I could just speak a high-level overview, but you can see it in the charging document. And so it wasn't just the murder of Officer Facio in this particular case. We also had a civilian who Mr. Nunez threatened with a gun, which started this whole cascade of events. Also, all of the officers who were involved in this case, who also had a gun pointed at them, who also had shots shot at them. So we look at all of those things, and that's where the aggravated assaults are, the disorderly conduct. So it's not just the officers involved in this case, there's also civilians involved. And so we weighed all of those things together.
One thing I've wondered, and let me know if you can answer this. Since Mr. Nunez is released from the hospital, I'm assuming there has been interviews done with
Yes.
him. Could you speak at all, if it is involved in a public record, and maybe you can speak to it at that point, of what he has said in those interviews?
Yeah, so all of that will eventually be released in the public record. And so you all can view that when you get the opportunity. But I will say this, is it's not just what he said that we use to evaluate, it's actually what he did. So one of the things that you all will see, and that will eventually be released, is there was a civilian on the side of the road that actually took a cell phone and actually filmed the entire event. And that video, once you watch it, you'll see likely the reason why I made the decision that I did, is because you can see exactly him raising a gun up, pointing that weapon at Officer Facio and firing. And that was the kill shot. That was a shot that went through his face. You'll be able to see that on video. And so, yes, all of those issues weigh heavily, and all of that information will eventually be released to the media.
At your tenure here as county attorney, how many times have you filed this notice of death penalty?
So this is our first time. We've had multiple cases brought to my office, and I did not believe that they met those objective factors under Arizona state law. So we've said no a whole lot of times, and this is our first one, which is why we take it seriously.
And you told me this before, but I forgot, I want to get it factually correct. How long had it been since a line of duty death in Pinal County before Officer Facio?
You're gonna test me on my knowledge. I believe it was, do you happen to know?
No, it's a good question.
Was it,
20 years, I remember.
it wasn't Lopez, was it?
I'm trying to think if there was someone past Jason.
I'm trying to think if there was somebody.
Jason Lopez would be 24 years ago.
It was? Yeah, so that was the last one. It was Jason Lopez. So the road that you just drove in on is Jason Lopez Circle, and that road is there to memorialize him. In fact, Sheriff Teeple and I, no more than, a couple of months ago, were at our Police Memorial Day, and I think it's going to be, 20 years this upcoming year?
25. So.
25, that we're going to be honoring him again here in Pinal County in the parking lot. So yeah, it's been that long, almost 25 years.
Mr. Miller, have you taken a look at other death penalty cases involving police around the country and how successful or unsuccessful they've been, and what do you plan to do to try and succeed?
Yeah, absolutely. So we take all of those issues into account, including the fact that I was also on the Capital Unit in Maricopa County Attorney's Office. So we look at all of those cases, my experience, but ultimately relying on the experience of the prosecutors who will be trying this case, what those cases are. And not only that, we don't just take prior cases from this state. We also discussed and talked to other prosecutors all across the entire country of what makes those prosecutions successful in order to weigh this particular decision, whether this was the right decision. And I affirmatively believe that this is the right decision.
Chief Bully, you mind if I ask you a question, sir?
Absolutely.
How did you weigh this decision? What are some things you thought of and weighed?
Well, I guess, I've been doing this going on 25 years now, and I've been to a lot of police funerals, unfortunately. This one, I look at the circumstances as well, and when it came to not only seeing the actions that Mr. Nunez did, I really looked at the impact it caused and on not only Officer Facio's family, the community, and my department, but also just how we don't want that to happen again and people think they can live while their loved one is no longer here. And those are things that I thought about and that I talked with our county attorney about.
Chief, question for you. Do you think it's the lack of the number of death penalty cases pursued in these types of cases that's leading to sort of the disrespect, I guess, of police officer life? And do you believe that something like this could actually change that perspective amongst bad actors in the community?
You know, I think there's bad actors that are going to continue to do bad acting stuff. There's a lot of people that this won't deter them. But at the same time, I think it sends a message that if you're going to take that stance and you're going to commit an action like this, that you know will cause harm or death to an officer, that hopefully at some point, they will take a second thought and reconsider their actions. So yes, I do.
Any other final questions?
I guess a factual question, is the
Sure.
only way someone can be put to death currently in Arizona lethal injection, or are there other opportunities?
It is. Yep. Yep.
How do you feel about that?
I guess there are other options other states are exploring, but we don't look at necessarily the methodology. I think what we're really examining and looking at is the views of the victim. This goes back to objective factors. This isn't something that's emotional. We're looking at something that we weighed, we considered, we discussed. We talked to people in state, out of state, from my office, outside my office. The victim's views, the next of kin, law enforcement, everybody involved in this case. And then we looked at, what does Arizona law say? How does Arizona law guide us? And because of all of that, we decided that this was the appropriate response to take in this particular case. All right, I'll just leave you with this final thing, is that again, I want to reemphasize, is that police officer is one of the most dangerous jobs in America. As we've seen, again, last year, it's risen by almost 20,000 in 1 year alone. I believe in 2023, there were about 60,000 assaults against police officers. Last year, there were nearly 85,000, according to FBI statistics, and 150 killed on duty, killed in the line of duty. It's a very, very dangerous job. We need to support them, respect them. It's okay to sometimes disagree if you do, but go into court and handle your disagreements. We don't do it on the streets. And so with that, thank you very much for attending. I want to thank all of our law enforcement partners for standing in solidarity for Officer Facio here today. Thank you.